All right. Going live. And today we're going to be answering the question of how do I balance my time effectively? Basically, how do I learn how to code while having a full-time job? And this is something that is actually super important these days. Kind of like with almost anything, to be honest, right? Because if you're trying to do just about anything in life, you're going to be focusing on balancing your life and whatever it is that you're pursuing. So, with that, I'm just making sure my son is sleeping nice and nice and sound. Also, just making sure the sound's working. All right, which it is. So great. So, how do we go about balancing learning to code with a full time job? So, again, if you're new to the channel, this is great. If this is your first time listening or second time listening to me, then you're probably gonna hear me say this multiple times. Well, what I really want to stress on this part is your goal is so important. Understanding what your goal is. If you don't understand what your goal is you're not going to make it very far. Start with the end in mind and reverse engineer everything else out after that. So, what do I mean by that? Pick what it is that you want to do, then choose the languages or the tools that you need to learn and understand how to utilize it effectively in order to become that software engineer, data analyst, whatever, cybersecurity analyst, it doesn't matter, right? Now, once you have that goal in mind, you have the things that you have to learn. And when it comes to balancing priorities, that's really what it is. It's just balancing priorities. If we were to look at our phones and see how much screen time we actually utilize, and I'm guilty of this, right? If we were to look and see how much like screen time how much time are we spending on YouTube? How much time are we spending on Instagram, TikTok, whatever other X, whatever other platforms that you guys are using, LinkedIn? How much time are we actually spending on those platforms? And are we able to cut that time in half and use half of that time? So if you spend 3 hours a day, is it possible to spend an hour and a half learning the skill that you need to do? That's the very, very, very first thing actually I would cut off or try to limit. But it can be very hard. One, because these programs are designed to keep us engaged. They're designed to have us addicted to it. It's just like, McDonald's and all the other fast food restaurants. They have scientists actually like testing ingredients to make it more addictive. So we want to eat it. We crave that kind of food. Same thing when it comes to, using social media and or gaming. Like might be some really big gamers stay up late. Sometimes I'm very guilty of this myself, like staying up late at night and then having to wake up really early in the morning, and then your next day, you're sacrificing your next day when we do that. And when we are on social media, we're sacrificing our goals, our things that we want to achieve within our lives, right? Because that's 3 hours a day. That 3 hours a day, just Monday through Friday, is 15 hours a week. And if we cut that in half, then it's 7.5 hours. But then it could be 7.5 hours towards coding or 7.5 hours towards, you know, researching something, whatever the case may be, whatever it is that you're learning. 7.5 hours of studying is nice. Is definitely a plus. You cannot take that away, right? That's a great thing. You're in a much better space than you were before. Now, if you already had an hour, or if you already had 30 minutes, or let's say hours, easy math. If you already had an hour, that's 5 extra. So that's 5 hours plus the 7.5 hours. Now you're at 12.5 hours. That's nice, not counting the weekends. Now maybe you don't need to cram so hard on the weekends. Maybe you could just do 2 hours on the weekends each day, because you want to be consistent. We want to be consistent with this. If we're inconsistent, then it's going to take us longer. And then it's going to also mess up with our balance too. We want to be very consistent. We want to do the same thing. We want to have like this routine that's built in and just be very, very, very consistent, because learning the code is not difficult. Learning to code is not difficult at all. The consistency factor of learning to code is difficult. So it's that the parts around it is the difficult aspects of learning how to code. But the actual programming languages itself, they're not that difficult, because like, I mean, nowadays anyway, because everything is just so like baked in. It's not like it was 20 years ago where you have to write, for what I hear, because I wasn't in coding 20 years ago, but from what I hear and from what I saw and from research, it was a lot more effort to get programs or get websites built. If you're, I'm dating myself, which is interesting, but if you're over 30, you should know what a floppy disk is, right? Like you should probably know what a floppy disk is. And you see, if you remember those floppy disks, they used to have like what, 3 megabytes, but they had whole applications on them. Nowadays, like, applications are much much bigger, but that's also because there's so much more baked into them. And when you start coding, what you realize is all of that code, this is how much you actually code, and then you have a whole bunch of helper code, right? So it's so much like to get into all of that, and I don't want to get into the weeds of like coding and everything, and I don't want to scare anyone away, because it's definitely doable. It's not difficult. It's just, all right, how do I balance my life? So if you made it this far and you're like, dang, Dave, you ain't really saying much. Look, practical tip right here. Go to Amazon, go wherever, buy this book. This book will change everything for you. It's called Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy. Eat That Frog. Now, this book, if you don't want to be productive, if you don't want to achieve anything in life, don't buy this book. Don't buy Eat That Frog. Do not do it. If you want to just continue to have like a whole bunch of wasted time on social media, scrolling, endless scrolling, it never stops. You told yourself you were going to go to bed an hour ago, and you're scrolling 5 more minutes, and then it turns into 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever the case may be. Right? Oh, I'm going to code soon. Let me just look at this. Somebody just sent me a reel. I want to watch it real quick. And then that reel turns into 30 other reels that you're sending back and forth, wasting time. I'm guilty of all of these things. Eat That Frog helps you put things into perspective. And one of my favorite tips is basically 21 ways to eat that frog. That's what it says. It's basically 21 strategies in which you can go and effectively be highly efficient and productive in your life. Instead of having life do you do life, right? Instead of just living your life and having like whatever happens, like take control of what's going on, you kind of need to start taking control. A lot of people live this passive lifestyle. Again, like I keep saying, I'm guilty of this as well, and I've been guilty of this. But things that have actually made an impact in me teaching myself Korean, teaching myself how to code, and getting my dev job, like becoming a software engineer, starting my own business and operating and running a business. These things you need to actually take control of, because if you don't take control of it, then nothing really gets done. And being a software engineer is kind of like running your own business, because you have that autonomy, you have that freedom. Like nobody's going to be on your back watching every little thing that you do. They just want you to get something done. In most cases, it's like, all right, here, there's the deadline. You said that you estimated that you're going to have this project or this feature done by X amount of time, right? 2 days, a week, 2 weeks, whatever the case may be. They expect it done at that time. If you're not good at balancing your own schedule, then guess what? If that project's not done, now everybody's looking at you because you're slowing everything up. And now you're going to start having these uncomfortable conversations. And now you're wondering if you're going to keep your job or not. So learning how to balance while we're learning is crucial, because when we get that job, we're going to have to continuously have that balance. So this is actually a skill that we need to have: effective time management. And I do have it in the description below. I do have some effective time management strategies. If you don't want to buy the book, if you want something that's free, definitely check out the strategies that I have down there. I'm not going to go over all of them in detail or anything like that. So just check it out. It's free. Just look it up. Get it down below. Come on, down below. Other thing, the one tip that I will give you though is you definitely want to write 3 things that you want to achieve that day. Just 3 things. What are the 3 things that you want to achieve? And if it comes down to, it could be one thing for family, it could be one thing for recreational, preferably not, but I mean, it can be. And it could be one thing like regarding coding or regarding learning. Write those 3 goals down. Ideally, it'll be 3 goals regarding coding specifically, right? 3 things that you want to achieve for coding or that for that day. It could be reading an article on Node.js or React or Next.js or server-side rendering or static server generation. It could be something along those lines, right? Or you can do it about whatever it is that you want to do. The whole thing is you want to have 3 goals, right? 3 main goals that you write down every morning, and then you work to achieve those goals. Now, what makes it even better is you can have like a lettering system. Like, so you can have an A, B, C. All right. Which one is priority? Because you need to kind of start ranking them in priority. A, B, C. Which one is the most difficult one? Do that one first. Then everything else is easier. Right. Now you're not dreading the day. So those are that is a practical tip that when implemented, it is highly successful. The problem is we have to be consistent with that. So we have to figure out how, like, we have to put this in a time where we're doing something else, right? So what is our routine? When you wake up, what do you do? What's the first thing you do? You check your phone? Probably. Most people probably like check their phone. We've been told millions and millions of times we shouldn't check our phones. Is that really going to change realistically for most people? Probably not. So what would be a good thing to do when we do check our phones first thing? Maybe have the note app there and think about 3 things that you want to do that day and write those 3 things in your note app. And then transfer it to like a Post-it or something, right? And have it there. Right? What is our routine? We're not trying to completely change our life. We're just trying to add in these little things that's going to make us more efficient, more productive. So if we're waking up, when we're checking our phone, if you're somebody who wakes up, does everything before checking their phone, then maybe, while you're eating, you can have a little like notebook next to you, a little piece of paper like there, and you could just write down some little 3 things that you want to do. Brainstorm those 3 things. If you're, walking, technology is great nowadays. You could just, talk to Google or talk to Siri and then have it jot down those notes for you, the 3 things that you want to do. It's not going to be perfect. I already know that, but it's better than nothing. The whole point is we want to control our lives. We don't want our lives to control us. We don't want to walk away 6 months from now and be like, damn, I ain't do nothing. Like, come on. We don't want to be like that. We want to be like, I achieved bop, 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 bop. And whenever you do something, whenever you achieve a goal that you set out for yourself, you're always, at least for me, maybe I can't speak for everyone. For me, I'm always low-key proud of myself. I'm always happy that I did what I said I was going to do, even though nobody else knows, right? That is the I learned something today. I did something today. That feeling, you want that feeling. It's kind of like, that's why we go to social media. That's why we play video games. That's why we do all these other things to get that dopamine effect of like, oh, I did something. Oh, like this is funny or whatever. We're trying to get that dopamine hit. But if we achieve our goals, we get that same, I don't know if scientifically speaking, but how I feel personally, I get that same like dopamine hit whenever I achieve my goal. So learning to balance code with a full-time job and a whole bunch of other responsibilities that you guys definitely have and that I definitely had is just coding whenever you can, but ultimately writing those goals, right? Write those goals down of what you want to achieve. So when you do have time, if you're waiting for somebody and it's taking them 5 minutes to show up, guess what you can do within those 5 minutes? You can have your little laptop open and coding something. You could be reading an article on your phone about something. You could be reading a book on the topic of programming. You could be doing something or listening to an audiobook for those 5 minutes. You'll get pretty far within those 5 minutes. Maybe not necessarily a YouTube video or anything like that, but something that's really, really educational. The problem with YouTube is it's a mix of education and entertainment. So a lot of people are watching this because they want to be entertained as well as they kind of want to learn. Learning is secondary on YouTube. I know there's going to be a whole bunch of people like, well, I learned so many other stuff. I learned this, that, and the third. And it's true. Yes, I learned a lot of stuff on YouTube as well. But again, it is very educational. You don't want somebody to be like, all right, today we're going to go and read this. And we're going to, like, you don't want that monotone type of personality teaching you either. So it is definitely both sides of the coin, or both sides of the sword, if you will, double-edged sword. So we must learn how to control ourselves. We must learn how to dictate our own lives, which is very difficult, but it's a skill that once we master that skill, we will be excellent software engineers, right? Because now I'm in control of my own time. I know how to organize it while I had a full-time job and a whole bunch of responsibilities. Now, once it becomes your full-time job, you have even more time to dedicate towards it, or to dedicate towards another craft or skill, right? Because once you have this skill of coding, you can do so many things. Is it possible to balance a full-time job, a family, and learning how to code? Well, I did it. So why can't you? I'm not special. So you definitely can do it. You absolutely can do it. It just takes a little bit of you, me, all of us being proactive in our lives. And that's our video for today. Thank you guys. I'll see you guys. Peace.